Hey everybody, this is Trey Scott, founder of WatchPitch, and I am so glad you took the time to watch this content. We are live right now, but we are also going to make this accessible to people after it is live. And however you found out about this WatchPitch live chat channel, I want to thank you for taking the time to invest in yourself, because this is all about you figuring out, with the help of these amazing coaches, how to do better at pitching and delivering what's heartful to you to the people who are listening. And at the end of the day, this is all about connection. WatchPitch has been designed as a platform to connect you and your passion with people who actually want to share your passion and just need to discover a little bit more about that, to figure out whether or not they want to support you, or whether or not they may know people and alliances that they can support you with to realize your dream. And that may be in the context of providing you with actual cash capital investment in your idea. It might be actually providing you with knowledge or extra information or supplies or materials to help you actually do an amazing job and get to the success that you want. But let me ask you a quick question here. Have you ever had an idea or been passionate about something that you needed and wanted to share with people but didn't know how to do that, or didn't know how to do that very well? Well, this is exactly what this is all about. We have 5 expert pitch coaches who tell stories every day, and their whole focus is on empowering people like you who are passionate about their lives, passionate about their business, who want to connect with other people, and who want to figure out a way to create alliances. And the way you do that is with connection. Now, I just want to share something with you that's been very alive for me lately, and it came up a few days ago when somebody reached out and we were talking about pitching, and she said, you know, the thing that I struggle with is feeling warmth. And this is what's got me sort of very reflective right now, is what is the alchemy of warmth, where we can get to a place where somebody feels now comfortable enough to just rest into listening. And I think initially we're all a little suspicious of what anybody is trying to share with us, especially if we're sensing that it's a pitch. And I'd love to come up with another word other than pitch in terms of connecting with people in order to engage them, to create relationships. And that's a much longer version, but we have this word called pitch, which is, capsulated in this notion that I'm going to say something to you, and hopefully I can engage you in a decision that will create a win-win for both of us. So we'll work with that for now. But underneath this right now, what's very alive for me is, how do we create warmth? How do we create comfort with one another so that I can hear you, not from a place where I'm defending myself, but from a place where I'm actually curious. And I want to actually find out more from you in terms of what you have and what it is that you're passionate about. So these are some of the topics that we'll be addressing on every WatchPitch live event channel. Whether or not on this channel there'll be content from these actual coaches. You'll see there's various videos on this channel that you can click on and learn from these coaches. They're amazing leaders in their own right. And to have them on this channel and on this event right now, I just cannot express enough appreciation. A big shout out to the technical crew here, Matt Dunn with avlive.co and Erica Mueller with ericamueller.com. Honestly, these are 2 people behind the scenes here that without their support, I would not be here. And I got to thank each one of these coaches once again for taking the time today to spend a little more value and to invest some value into your lives. Because at the end of the day, this is about you and the time you're taking right now to invest in yourself by taking the time to review, listen to these conversations, listen to these presentations from these various coaches, and figure out a way to integrate it into your next pitch. A lot of the language that I promoted in promoting this event to have you get on this channel was, learn today, pitch tomorrow. Well, I'm fully confident that if you even take 2 or 3 points that are being offered up by these pitch coach experts, you are going to be able to pitch tomorrow. You are going to be able to have a conversation with people who can genuinely help you and support you in a way that you haven't done before. And it's because there are decades of knowledge in the experience that each one of these people have. They have lived a life as authors, as speakers, people who have presented all over the world to large audiences to help them become better listeners, better leaders, and better decision makers. And so I'm so grateful to have all of them gathered here in this conversation and in this event so that you can learn from them. And actually, I'm going to be learning too. You know, it may look like I know what I'm doing here, but I'm winging it just like the rest of us in many respects. And I'm doing this in a way that's very candid, very vulnerable. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this. But I'm committed. I'm committed to you connecting with and solving the problems you're trying to solve. I gotta say, just to give you a quick snapshot story before we go to our first speaker, the beginning of and the genesis of WatchPitch all started with somebody raising their hand in front of a panel of investors who was a startup entrepreneur. And they got up and they said, I don't know how to connect with you guys. Like, how do I do this? I've sent emails, I've made calls, I've left messages. Like, how do I get in front of you so that you can get a sense of who I am? And this was the beginning of WatchPitch, where if you download the app, if you listen to the podcast, you're going to learn how to craft a pitch and deliver that to an investor who are on the platform looking for opportunities that you may be able to offer. Let's pause here right now, and I want to go to our first guest, Bill Treasurer. He's an author, he's a world-renowned speaker, he's a colleague, and I cannot thank you enough, Bill, for being on this live call event. Thank you.
Trey, whenever you're going to ask for anybody to show up, you're the one guy I would always show up for.
Man, thank you so much. You're solid. Great.
Well, I love what you're doing with WatchPitch too. It's fantastic. It's a great tool. It's a great app, and it does a great service to folks that want to bring their voice out into the world and bring their ideas and give them expression. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely an effort and passion and wanting to connect people, like you know. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say that, I've been thinking about coming into today's session about, what are some words of guidance that I might be able to offer based on having seen a lot of pitches and been involved with a lot of people who have to present and in a compelling way. And, let me give you the first piece of advice, and it sounds so basic, but we have a 2-day presentation skills class, and we tell people prepare, present, and practice.
Oh, I like.
And that, a lot of people think that they can just going to show up and throw up. Yeah. Right. Or just wing it. Right. They're like, well, I know my idea so well, it's going to be easy for me to just go up and I'll just speak just off extemporaneously because I know it inside out. Yeah. It's not enough. You've got to get, totally prepped, including, I think, type your notes, type the things you're going to say. And that's only a part of it because that just gives you the mental rehearsal when you're like reading the things that you want to say. And a lot of times when you read something, the way your internal voice is and how you actually would speak it out loud are two different things. So you've got to then practice by getting the words out of your mouth for the pitch as well. So you got to type it, you got to talk it. Get in front of people that will allow you to make some mistakes. So prepare, practice, present would be sort of the first thing that I would say.
Excellent. So, I created WatchPitch so that people could actually record and see themselves and actually get feedback from people. So sometimes it's hard to get everybody together in a room. How do you find video recordings, sharing that sort of practice session, and then giving that feedback to people? Do you think that's an effective way to get feedback?
I think it's a great way to get feedback. I mean, just think about your own presentation skills. People can tell you, yeah, you're a good presenter. You might want to do this more, do this less. But if you actually see yourself presenting on video, you can make so many much more, quick and dramatic changes. Yeah. Having said that, my second piece of advice would be this. I have a friend, as you know, Trey, that I co-authored a book with that spent 30 years as a Naval SEAL officer.
Yeah.
The Navy, right? And it's very common in the SEALs to mobilize the red team. And that is to be basically the folks that are going to poke holes in your plan. They plan like crazy. They plan like, because they're always worried about Murphy, right? That something could go
right. I know that guy. Yeah.
And then you got the red team, the red cell, which is supposed to poke holes in the plan and find the vulnerabilities and find the Achilles heels. When I was at Accenture, we had the same thing. If you were going to be pitching a large, and a lot of times the RFPs that we were, answering were $100 million project, right?
Jeez, yeah.
And so there's other competitors, the other big 8 management consulting companies. And so you'd want to mobilize the black team, same thing as the red cell, which is to poke holes in that in the proposal. So when you're getting ready to pitch, if you can mobilize a few trusted people as your red cell that you get to pitch in front of, and they have nothing to do but poke holes in your pitch, what it does is it allows for 2 things. It helps you develop your FAQ, which you need to have, and which you can develop your pitch around. But the more important thing is it helps you gain emotional inebriation and bring it down to emotional sobriety. So it helps you stop being emotionally inebriated when you get defensive. If they're poking holes in your plan, it's very normal because you're so attached to it. You're so attached to your pitch. It's very normal for you to get defensive when they ask you a question scrutinizing your plan. And you never want that to happen during an actual pitch.
Gosh, yeah. Oh my goodness.
If you have your red cell asking you the questions so you can manage your defensiveness and stay emotionally sober, that's one of the great values of doing it in front of a red cell too.
I love that idea. I want to jump in here because I think it's so juicy, because I think that we intuitively know when people get defensive. And as soon as somebody goes on the defense, now you're going on the defense, now everybody's shut down, and now we don't have any way of connecting it. We just lost each other because now we've got like armor up. That's super powerful. I love the idea of that red team or that red group who's going to come in, punch holes and go, well, hey, this is real. This is legit. Let's work through that so I can feel more comfortable, because that's going to come up.
It goes to your initial conversation when you started today about this warmth and connection. If you find yourself sort of getting defensive, this is my product. You realize how much I've invested in this, and mentally and even with money and such. Yeah. And it's normal for you to be like, well, that's not true. And then it's like, right. So if you can get emotionally sober by working with a red cell team, now when you get the question and it feels defensive, you can sort of validate the person and say, you know what, I totally get where you're coming from. Right. And I understand that concern. And you're no longer defensive. In fact, you're working with them, and it builds that warmth and connection that you talked about.
Love that. Love that. Super important.
Another thing that is important, and hopefully your listeners wouldn't find this too obvious, but your pitch should have some level of personalization, right? Like, I love one of my clients that I've worked with 4 times. She wrote the foreword to one of my books, Sarah Blakely, right. The founder of Spanx. Yeah. And that's, multinational.
What a story. Yeah.
$1 billion international retail enterprise. She's the sole shareholder of the company. But when how she invented her product, let's remember she was a stand-up comedian, and she was selling Lanier office products. Like going door to door selling fax. But she was really frustrated because she couldn't find any pantyhose that had were cut off at the bottom for capri pants. So she ended up studying the pantyhose industry, and she would go to Georgia Tech at night and figure out what is the stuff that they're using for it. She wanted a new material for it. And she developed, here's a woman as a stand-up comedian selling Lanier office products. She gets a patent for this the Spanx product, which is a combination of Lycra and spandex. And when she tells that story, that her product developed out of her own personal need. What's interesting about that story is she tried to sell the product to textile mills up in North Carolina, and all of them would decline. So she'd be like, can you help me build the prototype? And they all said, no. And then she tried one more time. Another guy said no, but he called her the next day and said, Sarah, I want to talk to you about that product that you had. I went home that night and I spoke to my wife and 3 daughters and told them about this ridiculous girl who tried to come up and make this product. And you know what? They got so mad at me that they made me call you up today and say that I'll do it. But that's a great story, right? Yeah. So you got to personalize your pitch with what was it that drove the need for you to invent the invention in the first place. Personalize. Nice.
Fantastic. Well, and I think that anybody who understands that if you have connected at that level, where what's amazing about that story too is that he went home and actually talked to his wife and his daughters about this crazy person at the office. So they're already connected. And the saying goes, we know 200 people at least. And if we're sharing whatever it is that we heard, perhaps over lunch with the meeting that occurred that sounded sort of interesting, but maybe we weren't 100%, but now we're going to take it to our red team, if you will. So what do you think about this? I would imagine that venture capitalists and angel investment groups, they're all talking amongst themselves around people who have come into the room, who have done a pitch and said, so what do you think? Of course, people are going to be talking about it after you've been in there, and you want to give them something to talk about. And that feedback might not happen in the room, but it might happen tomorrow.
Right. Which is, trust the long arc of the story. Yeah. And some level of rejection is going to happen, and it's got to be part of the narrative, right? In fact, it makes it all the sweeter when you get to the better part of the story, if there were some rejections along the way. When Stephen King wrote the novel Carrie, wrote the book Carrie, he got 28 rejections, and he would put them on a nail on his wall, and he would post the rejections. Oh. I mean, it's so common among writers to get rejected that there used to be a website, I think it's still there, Rejection Connection. Oh. So, if you get rejected with your pitch, that's a merit badge, right? Like you're earning things, you're learning things too in the rejection, right? About what you could do differently next time. So in Sarah's story, just like anybody pitching their new product, don't get so demoralized when you get a rejection, because it could be a good thing that leads you to the better part of the arc of the story.
Amen. That's so true. Well, Bill, I cannot thank you enough about the value you just offered to our listeners here during this live event. I'm going to reach out to my technical director here, Matt, and to see if Dominic Warfield from Amsterdam is available to join us for this Zoom call. We are currently in Asheville, and Bill, I imagine you're also in Asheville. Is that correct? Very good.
In Asheville. Yep.
Nice. How are we doing, team? Are we going to be going to Amsterdam, or should Bill and I continue the conversation? And while we're doing that, I noticed a couple books there on the bookshelf there. Is that's your recent one?
What a coincidence.
Hey, look at that. Nice.
Yeah, this is a book about courage. It's called Courage Goes to Work, and it came out in its 10th anniversary edition.
Wow, solid.
The foreword was written by the president and CEO of the Center for Creative Leadership and a former vice admiral in the U.S. Navy. Great. And this book became the 6th best-selling management book in 2009 in China, of all places.
Wow. Well, good on you. Bill, thank you again so much. Dominic is on the call, and we're going to go to Amsterdam. And again, thank you so much. If people want to find out more about Bill, and we're going to add this to the notes at the end, you can go to giantleapconsulting.com to find out more about Bill Treasurer. Bill, thank you so much.
Buddy.
All right.
Take care.
Appreciate it. Dominic, are you there? How are you? Thank you so much for rallying in all of your travels to do this. I'm so grateful.
Oh, it's such an honor to be a part of this.
Nice. Well, thank you. This is definitely something that we're experimenting with, but the whole point of this is to bring more valuable content and more ideas and sort of empowerment to people who are maybe struggling to be courageous, or maybe they're totally full of courage, but they just don't know how to, connect with people well enough to actually begin then that warming up process that then allows us to be in flow with each other. And I'm curious, with all of the heartfulness that you bring to every gathering that I've ever been in with you, how you do that. Like, what is the magic that people can learn from you to provide and connect more with people when they're trying to engage them as partners?
Great question. So there's this one quote that I absolutely love from Joseph Campbell. And he says, the privilege of a lifetime is to be yourself. And ultimately, I think in whatever your delivery may be, even if you are wanting to just be a better mother, partner, coworker, the best thing you can do is show up and be yourself. And in that, there lies a possibility for deeper authenticity, for more meaningful connection. And I think more often in the creative, through the creative lens and wanting to promote yourself in a professional way, I think there is a sense that people can feel into when someone is being inauthentic.
Totally. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We can see it, feel it right
place
away.
to
We
start.
get defensive. Yeah, I get it.
And I also think more often people kind of want to, express their visions and their passions, and that's a great thing. But how can you actually do that from exploring it from the inside out than the outside in? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it sounds like then a lot of this is just getting still and quiet with yourself and dialing in your own truth about, who I am before I'm going to actually then represent who I am to the rest of the world, whether it's another individual or it's a whole room of decision makers.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Stillness is one way. I mean, there's many ways you can center yourself. Ultimately, the best resource is to attune into the body before you deliver and or understand how sensation and the energy pulses inside yourself. It could be adrenaline, it can be anxiety, and more importantly, how do you relate with when you have information that is moving sensation inside, and find that midline, find that grounding. That is a way in which you can speak your truth, but not outside of yourself.
Yeah, so this is so helpful because I often think when I am pitching in environments, I will really want to engage with that person. And that, what I'm hearing is that actually could be overwhelming, and that really what I need to do is maybe take a step back and go like, hey, so where am I at?
Right.
And get centered there, and then just be, again, I guess a little bit of this then comes up to how can I be comfortable enough to then actually speak from this place of, okay, so that's my truth. Sorry, for better or for worse, this is what's alive for me.
Definitely. And I think what happens is when you put yourself in different dynamics and different people, because everybody has this unique certain quality of energy. Some people inspire more exuberance. Some people can almost feel intimidating. So you can maybe question yourself. But the thing is, that's life. We have to learn how to be in the full spectrum of our shared humanity. And in that, when we learn how to position ourselves and learn how to be authentic in all the different types of energies, then there lies an opportunity to expand your capacity. And when you expand your capacity, you then have reference and anchoring inside yourself that you know how you can shift and not overextend and or contract or diminish the greatness that you are. I think that's something that I've really practiced along, and again, it's a practice. And the way you practice that is by engaging and being in life, being living passionate in your life, And
it's risky.
It's risky, vulnerable.
Right.
You learn how to begin to refine your own instrument. You know, refining your own instrument is to participate in life, living in your passions, and try to do it from the inside out rather than the outside in.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And what I love about that is it gives us then permission in any given moment to be really happy if that's how we're feeling, or actually be kind of bluesy because, you know, I'm actually not feeling 100%, but I'm still, like, at my core, true to myself, which is I am really passionate about this idea. I'm really passionate about this business. I want to see this thing grow. And, you know, maybe I'm not doing a backflip and super excited and showy about it, but it's still really true for me. And I do think that people register that truth. I think they can be very forgiving of people's moods, but I don't think people are very forgiving if they're thinking this is an inauthentic person and they're not coming from that center. And actually that's kind of disturbing. Like you're almost potentially inviting somebody to be in relationship with something that's unstable because you're unstable. And that's not going to be, that's not a great place to build a relationship from.
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of people can feel, you know, when someone is being, trying to say the right thing, but it's not really who they are, you know? It's almost like the scripted, perfect way to say something. And I think in whatever moment life brings you in, you know, we're going to explore different emotions. That's just life. But how can we show up and allow ourselves to know that we have the challenge, but most importantly, like, allow our light to shine through. And that is what speaks in the heart. And I think when we express ourselves from the heart, we'll never go wrong in what we're really passionate about.
So true. Dominique, thank you so much for this time from Amsterdam. I am so jealous that you're there and I'm here, but in the same token, we're together and we're here and we're doing this. And I really appreciate being able to find out more about this, the importance of heartfulness. If people want to find out more about you and what you're doing and the workshops that you're teaching, how would they do that?
You can visit my website, DominiqueWarfield.com, and devotedhealingarts.com. And I have some upcoming workshops in Wales and in Thailand, and all that information will be on my website. Just sign in my newsletter and you will have access to it all.
Great. We'll be sure to also include that in all of the pieces associated with this live event. And anytime anybody wants to click and watch it again in a recorded session. Dominique, thank you so much. Really grateful.
And good luck to everybody. Really, good luck and enjoy life.
Yes.
Okay?
Right on. See ya. Bye. Bye. So we are going to go from Amsterdam to Los Angeles, California, in the Topanga Canyon of Los Angeles, sort of threading the needle and the Santa Monica Mountains between the Pacific Ocean and the Los Angeles Valley. Dr. Harry Morgan Moses, how are you?
Hey, good, pal. How you doing?
All right, good. Good to be here. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning there on the West Coast to share some depth here with regards to how to show up and be in relationship with people that you want to engage as either investors or partners or decision makers that can move your idea forward. And you've had a lot of experience in this. There are thousands of people who have read your books, who have seen you live in speaking engagements all over the world. So I'm very grateful for you taking the time to be here. And I'm wondering, you know, just to get us started, how do you connect? How does a person connect? And if they're not connecting, how do they adjust so that they are back on point and really now then presenting an opportunity to connect with either an audience or with decision makers that are really potentially going to make a big difference in their lives?
Well, I think both of your other coaches really did a nice job about describing the importance of being authentic. One of my favorite teachers in time is Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "What you are, speak so loudly I can't hear what you're saying." And this is a big challenge when we have a big idea or we're enthusiastic or excited about something, because we tend to get outside of ourselves. We tend to solely run with our own agenda. And when you're solely running with your own agenda, everybody can pick that up. It's like they feel the anxiety, they feel the push on it. And we're in a political climate, at least in this country, where you see so much willingness to go to the surface instead of coming from depth. I mean, I really wonder, as I watch some of the players on the world stage, who's really listening. I think one of the great things is certainly in the last several years of my life, again, because I don't have the same schedule that I used to have, which was a very completely demanding schedule. So you always were running with the next thing and finishing this and getting on to the next thing and getting on to the next thing. And I think one of the things that I missed in that time of my life was really deep listening, to really be able to listen attentively, not just with your ears, but listen with your being and with an authentic willingness to pay attention. We all have that part that wants to go from the thing that you said to the thing that I'm thinking, instead of really listening and the ideas getting all the way through.
Yeah, you're right.
And I certainly know in a lot of the board member work that I do and councils that I serve on, that the only way to move things forward is to make sure that everybody is heard. And that's a time-consuming process. And I think when you're talking about this world that you're in, which is trying to reach investors or people who can support you with your big idea, I think the challenge is to make sure that they know who you are as a caring person, that you're not only to care about this idea, and obviously you're motivated to move your idea forward, but are you working in a manner that includes the other person, that includes you're valuing the other person, the fact that they're giving you time and attention, the fact that you're caring, so I think even as you see in our little WatchPitch videos that we have there, the need to be very authentic and to be very relaxed, as opposed to driving with your ambition. That I think is a big challenge, because these people are busy. There's a wonderful old expression that says, if you really want to get something done, give it to a really busy person.
Right.
Right.
It's true.
Right, because they're already moving. So a really busy person who says out loud, "I'm looking for ideas. I'm looking to jump to a new level. I'm looking for some creative idea." This is a very busy person who is at the same time spoken their intention to listen. So again, we're in a situation where if you can come together as two people who are trying to hear each other and authentically trying to communicate with each other, I think that's valuable. In my particular spiritual world, there's a lot of discussion about inclusivity and diversity. And, obviously, if you're on this call with us now, you can see I'm a white guy. I believe that to be inclusive is to be caring, is to be compassionate. It's like the Dalai Lama says, my religion is kindness. So when people are being accusatory or suggesting because of your race or color or creed or way of being that you're a particular way, or that you have built-in prejudices, that's kind of an assault. And I don't feel that you can take it that way. You have to be able to simply listen and love and be present. And we have the same thing happening with this idea of people who are wealthy and people who are struggling to find their means of wealth. That we have to understand that wealthy people have challenges and problems and are dealing with their own personal growth issues at whatever way they can, and make sure that we don't have any bias that we're functioning with. Like, I can't reach these people. Well, you've already separated yourself. There's these people and me. Right. So, again, I think we have to come from a place of genuine, authentic caring about all souls, and then know that each soul has an agenda. And if we can communicate that we're caring and involved people, and that our idea might even be beneficial for a lot of people, if we can bring that kind of compassion and caring and I don't know what the right word was, paying attentionness, I guess.
I mean, it's connection. I mean, in many respects, this is what I love about what you're saying, is that in short, if we're not listening, if we're not choosing to be in relationship with those decision makers or those potential decision makers or those potential investors, I mean, we're trying to bring them in to our dream and our passion. And if we are taking up all the oxygen in the room by telling them about ourselves and telling them about our idea and our product and our business, and we haven't taken the time to actually listen to where they're at and what it is that they want, I mean, there's a good chance that the reason you're in the room or you've had the opportunity to connect with somebody is because there is some shared interest. But it's one thing getting that initial, well, okay, I'll take the time out of my life and listen to what you have to say and what you're going to present. But I don't think that's enough. And what I'm hearing from you is that if we do go in with some biases about them, or we're already going in thinking, God, there's not a chance in heaven I'll be able to win this. Like, I don't even know why I'm in this room. I mean, the whole self-talk that gets us off track, which, we talked about earlier with Dominique, is, if we know that center line of who we are, and from that place we can actually genuinely listen to the people that we're presenting to, well, now we got the opportunity for understanding and connection, and this whole theme of warmth that I'm exploring, about the alchemy of warmth and how do we create it between two humans that potentially can really benefit by being in relationship with one another.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that is the humanness of it. The humans tend to be anxious, and we tend to get nervous, and we can be in certain situations, even if we're vastly experienced. As you have mentioned, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of speaking throughout the last 30 years, and literally all over the world. And I'm always surprised when all of a sudden I'm getting nervous about something that I'm an expert in, and I've delivered thousands of hundreds of times, and all of a sudden in some environment, I'm getting nervous or anxious or excited. Those things have to be included. So we talked about that when you're recording a pitch. You may not be very comfortable around the camera. So you have to find a way to get yourself relaxed enough, turn that camera into a friend that you know very well.
Yeah, I love that.
Find a way to make it personal. One of the ways that I've had the great fortune to visit the Dalai Lama in his home in Dharamsala, India, and was in a seminar for five days in which he was participating. And what I saw was the tremendous respect and humility which everybody approached the Dalai Lama. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be wonderful if we learned how to treat everybody like that?
I love that. I'm in. Harry, thank you so much for taking the time this morning to be with us all on this live event. And it is being recorded, so it will be able to be shared. If people wanted to find out more about you and your work, how would they find out about that?
Well, the very best way is just go to newthought.com. Don't have a thought, have a new thought. Go to newthought.com. Sign up on my list. I put out presentations, little brief ideas to keep people on their toes and inspired. And they're all free. And then you can check in with me at the way that you choose to.
Nice. Harry, thank you again. I'm so appreciative. We're going to leave the coastline of California, and we're going to go to the coastline of the East Coast, to the Atlantic Ocean, to Juan Garzon, a pitch expert in his own right. Do we have him available? Just want to double check. Yep, is he online? So we're working again on all the connectivity, and I know he's around the corner. and he's on. You're at Hilton Head, aren't you, Juan?
I am. We're heading back from Hilton Head home.
Oh,
just
you
spent
are?
a week there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And,
whole family
we just
on the beach.
So yeah, we were up at the beach with the whole family.
Excellent.
And the kids went up with the grandparents a couple days ago, so my wife and I could have a couple days. On our
Good
own.
one.
So now we're headed back. We just pulled off. I want to make sure that
thank you.
that we've got the time and ability to chat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so I imagine you've caught a little bit of this live event, and I'm so glad for you to be able to carve out this time on your trip back from Hilton Head. So much of what I have admired about what you have brought to the table and into the ecosystem of WatchPitch has been your expertise with regards to connecting people. And you do this regularly with Start Charlotte, with Pitch Breakfast, where you have created a container for entrepreneurs and startups to present to genuine investors in addition to presenting to the community. And I imagine you've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pitches. And I know you got something to say about what really works when you're doing that and what to avoid. And I'm wondering if you'd take a couple minutes with us and share that.
Absolutely. And it's funny because we've done the math, and I have seen over 500 pitches between Pitch Breakfast, demo days, and investor pitches in angel groups here in Charlotte. So it's been a lot. And when you watch that many pitches in front of investors, you really do see that, there are some things that people consistently do that work, and there are some things that people do that don't work. And so yeah, we've seen a few, and thanks so much for having me on here. I've gotten a chance to hear some of the other presenters, and it's been great.
Good, thank you.
And I totally agree with a lot of what they're saying. I was listening specifically to say, I don't want to repeat what other great coaches are already saying. And I think one of the things that probably bears repeating, if nothing else, is how important it is to really know your audience. And this is true for any communication. And this is the great thing about, doing this. And Trey, you and I have had conversations about this when it comes to specifically to pitching investors. But if you're just trying to do any persuasive communication, you're trying to, sell or convince somebody of anything, you have to know your audience and know where their head is and where they're coming from. When it comes to an investor pitch, you're talking to an investor who puts money into a business with the hope that they're going to get more money when your business grows, as your business is more successful. That's something that you can never forget. We've seen lots of companies pitch where the founder will get up and they're very passionate about the product that they've created, or this design that they've had, and they forget about the business side. When you're talking to an investor, think about what an investor is listening for. A really good angel investor or a venture capitalist, or a lot of these investors who work with multiple companies, they hear pitches all the time, and they in a few seconds will make up their mind whether this is something that's worth really digging into, or no, this is just not for me.
And do you think that happens, that they actually do make decisions very quickly after a few minutes? From what you're evaluating?
So interestingly, and there's been a lot of science behind this, but humans tend to make emotional decisions, and then we spend time rationalizing what those decisions are. And investors are no different, right? They're going to get a vibe in the first few seconds, and then they're going to spend the rest of the pitch just rationalizing in their minds why they are going to make the decision that they've already made. Now, there are instances where they might change their minds, but generally speaking, they're going to get a vibe one way or another, and then they're going to just rationalize that decision. So you have to structure your pitch in such a way that you are rationalizing the decision for somebody who's going to put money into a business and is going to see it grow. And the way to do that is you focus on the business that you're building, not on the product that you've created. The business is a lot more than your product or your service or whatever that might be.
Right. I mean, everybody's looking for not only the cash flow, but also that return. I mean, if they're investors and you're asking them to come on board, It's about,
Yeah.
making sure that you're going to return that as well.
And it's about risk, right?
Yeah.
They're looking at how do they mitigate the risk. And are you in an industry that you understand, that you have experience in? Do you have a team that can actually pull this whole thing off? Are you solving a problem that there's a big enough market for? Have you considered the competition and how this is going to impact you? The more of these types of things that you can address in your pitch, the more you're mitigating the risk that the investor is taking by putting that money in.
So let me ask you, if you're not really addressing those fundamentals, it strikes me that it's just a non-starter. And I'm wondering if, what I love about what Dominic mentioned is how we can get off center. And if, you get into that sort of beginning conversation and you kind of stray from who you really are, and you maybe try to create a show, if you will, in your delivery, that your thinking is maybe what they want to hear. And, at the end of the day, my sense is that if you lose track of that, it's really hard to get back to where you can be in now a healthier or more balanced relationship with that value proposition about your business.
Sure.
Do you see a way to recover from that place where maybe you have kind of failed, but that now you've sort of come out and just said, you know what, okay, like maybe I overrepresented that. Let's really talk about the numbers. Let's figure out a way to engage what it is that I'm doing really successfully in my team and grow this in partnership with you. Because a little bit of what I'm hearing is that it's really important to address the math. I mean, this has got to make sense for everybody.
Yes. Yeah, you have to address the math. You're always going to get these, and we have this at Pitch Breakfast all the time, where you're going to get a panel of investors that have an interest in what you're doing, right? The problem that you're solving, the space that you're in, your approach, it's all unique. But they really are chomping at the bit for the math. How much does it cost you to produce this product? What is your cost per acquisition, right? How much money does it take to acquire one customer? And then how much profit are you making off of that? All of those types of questions, that's what an investor does. It's like, think of anybody who is putting money in their retirement account. You're looking at, well, how much am I going to get out of that? What are the costs? Where can I put my money where it's has a greater chance of return and a lower risk? An investor is thinking the exact same way. And only your business is the asset. Your business is the stock. And so they're comparing yours with a lot of others, and they have to get to the math sooner or later. So I don't want to diminish the fact that it is important to show that you're passionate about the problem that you're solving, and keep that in mind, because this is probably one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen other entrepreneurs make, is they fall in love with their product or their idea. Wrong. That's not the approach that's going to you're going to achieve success in. Fall in love with the problem that you're solving. Fall in love with the customers that you are helping with your product or your service, because it will allow you to be flexible. It will allow you to pivot when the market dictates that a pivot is needed. But if you fall in love with your product, then you're going to just sort of go straight ahead regardless of what the market tells you.
Right.
People who fall in love with the product are not easily coachable, right? Yeah. Because they're constantly looking for some sort of validation that their original idea is the right path. That makes an investor very nervous, right? An investor wants you to pivot. An investor wants you to be so passionate about the problem that you're solving that you're going to pivot, you're going to make the changes that you need to in order to be successful. I actually really, and I encourage this to companies that I mentor for pitching, tell them when you've pivoted, right? Be willing in your pitch to say, we started off with this assumption, we started off with this product, we learned this and we changed, and now we're doing this. So being open like that and showing that you're passionate about this problem and that you're willing to change when the market dictates that change is needed, that's a huge green flag for an investor to say, this is someone I need to follow and pay attention to.
I love that. And it just speaks volumes about being in relationship with your potential partner, being in relationship with the marketplace, being in relationship to your customers. And I can't
Yep,
say
absolutely.
enough. Yeah, it's really great. So if people wanted to find out more about you and what you do, what's the best way to direct them into your direction?
Sure. So there's several different ways that you can find out about what we do. One is just my website, juangarzon.com, my
Great.
first name and last name.com. I do a lot of messaging strategy and storytelling for businesses and startups. Trey, you mentioned Pitch Breakfast,
Yep.
which is a nonprofit that we have in Charlotte. We hold events in 4 different cities, giving entrepreneurs the opportunity to practice that investor pitch in front of a live audience with a panel of expert mentors for feedback. You can learn more about Pitch Breakfast at pitchbreakfast.com, right on the website.
Great.
And if you're in the Charlotte area and want to learn more about sort of the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem and some of the stories of founders and entrepreneurs in Charlotte, visit startcharlotte.com. We're actually going to be rebranding here soon as Charlotte Inno.
Cool.
So you're going to see all of that and those announcements. But you simply go to startcharlotte.com. You can learn more about the entrepreneurial ecosystem and investors who are looking for companies on those websites.
Fantastic. And we'll be sure to include all that information in this live event and all the peripheral content that we include with it. Thank you for taking the time and pulling over. My best to the driver to allow you to do this with us all. Safe travels. And thank you again, Juan. I'm very grateful. Love having you in this ecosystem.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Our pleasure. So we're going to stay on that East Coast. We're going to go up to Charleston and we're going to talk to Zach Giglio. Zach is with us. He has this company called Startup Comms. Zach and I have spent some time together in Charleston and really has done an amazing job. And you've seen probably some of his coaching video on the website. And I know technically what we're doing here is we're reaching out to him. He should be.
I'm here. Yep.
Oh, there you are. Excellent. How you doing, Zach? Excellent.
Great, Trey. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for rallying and being with us here this morning. And or actually now it's the afternoon. Really had, as you saw, some great content from other pitch coaches like yourself. I can't wait to dive into this final deep dive into figuring out how to be the best at delivering what is valuable to us, to people that we want to engage and add value to our world as well, and to create a win-win for us as business partners.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. I really appreciate you having me on here. It's really exciting. I mean, meeting you and spending time with you in Charleston and doing the videos, definitely one of the highlights of my year so far.
Oh, great. Nice.
What you're doing for startups when you're, I think you and I share the same type of passion where there are startups around the world who have perhaps the best products or the best teams or the best ideas that could really change people's lives.
You're right.
But the way that they can actually get resources is way more difficult for them than maybe a more established company with lots of money in the bank. Yeah. And so I think what you're doing and also what I'm trying to do with Startup Comms is just a huge service to the entrepreneur community. And I love what you're doing. I love being a part of this. So I want to thank you for that. You're really inspiring.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And the appreciation is mutual.
Yeah, that's great. So I think it seems fitting, at least for me, to kind of have this part of the presentation at the end. So I think what's important today is to talk about, you have these ideas, you have these messages or really important parts of your business that you want to communicate, whether it's to an investor, whether it's to a partner, or whether maybe you have a new product or service or pivot or fundraising round that you want to announce. When you're thinking about these things, about telling that story or conveying that message, I believe very strongly that there are 3 simple questions that you want to answer before you start to try to deliver that message. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about the message could be as simple as an email. It could be as grand as a holistic communications and marketing campaign. If you take these 3 questions and you can answer them very succinctly and very clearly, you're probably going to be in a lot better position to deliver a concise message, number 1, to deliver it to the right audience, number 2, and to deliver it in a way where that audience is really going to resonate with that message. So I think those three questions that are really important are this. So it's, what do you want to say, right? Who do you want to say it to? Who is your audience? And three, how do you say it? Now, when I talk about what you want to say, I think it's very important to kind of start with that as your beginning. Because if you're thinking first, who's my audience? You have and you touched on this before, but you have maybe the tendency to kind of lose who you are because you're already thinking too much about your audience.
Right.
So I think you really want to start first with who I am. What do I want to say? What is important to me? What is important to my business? And when you're thinking about that, also doing a couple other checklists, does this idea or message, does this align with my principles or my business's principles? Does it align with my mission? Does it align with my value system? You never really kind of want to stray from, of course, you've got to pivot, you have to evolve, but typically you don't want to stray so far outside of yourself or of your business's identity that you could create confusion in the market. As you know, everything lives online today. I could find out anything about anyone, about any company from the beginning to the end of time. So people like to see this nice, consistent paper trail. So it's good to make sure your message aligns. And then you also have to think about, why is this message important for me or for my company to be communicating? When you think about that, you probably get a little bit of a better idea about how to frame that message. Then when you move on, so let's say you have an idea of what your message is. Now you want to say, okay, now who is my target audience for this message? And I think that helps refine the message in a couple ways. Particularly, you want to make sure that the target audience that you're talking to, whether, again, investor, partner, customers, general market, media, anybody, you want to make sure that they actually care about this message. Right? It's very natural to become very excited about something you've been able to accomplish or to want to talk about something you believe in. But you definitely want to make sure that whoever you're communicating this to, they care about that too, right? Like they find that exciting as well, or they probably would if they heard it. And then you also want to make sure, if you're thinking about the audience, to take a step back and say, is this audience important to my business and why? So of course, investors are important to your business, but what kind of investor is important to your business? As you know, there's lots of different kinds of investors. There's very active investors. There's investors who invest in certain types of technology, whether they're green technology, sustainability, or they're fintech, or, you don't, so it's not just investors. You want to make sure, why is this target audience important to my business? And that'll help you, again, think about the message and refining it in a way that's going to really impact the audience you're trying to deliver it to. And those two questions, I think you should probably ask yourself or your team. Sit your team down in a room, your communications team, your exec team, whoever helps align the business and moves the business forward. It's very important to kind of have people involved. I mean, the more the better. You don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. Right. But the more the better. And then to ask these questions over and over and over again. So you're asking the question, what do you want to say? And then you write it down on the board, right? Then you say, okay, what are we really trying to say here? And try to really get down to a very refined point. And then with your audience, you actually kind of want to grow your parameters there, or your filters there, so you're reducing your parameters, kind of thing. And once you kind of have that locked down, then, and I think only then, should you move on to, all right, now how are we going to convey this message? How are we going to tell this story? And I mean that in a couple different ways. So one, I mean, what format is this story or is this message most, is it the best fit for, right? What is the most natural way to tell this story? And you could really kind of plan that a little bit. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the New York City Library did this amazing thing.
I have. Yeah, but
with those novels, right? I mean, like that makes no sense. That's not natural, but it's brilliant and it worked beautifully. So, I mean, these are kind of rules of thumb that, you want to be the exception to the rule. That's great. But generally, you want to make sure that the story that you're telling can be told in a way that is very natural for the channel. Like you wouldn't get up on stage and you're pitching some business and then you start Instagramming, right? I mean, that's an obvious extreme example, but you also wouldn't maybe try to, do Instagram posts on Facebook or Facebook on YouTube. And also you're on WatchPitch, right? You have 1 minute. And I think to Juan before, he talks about people make their decisions so quickly. 1 minute might sound short, but it's not short. I mean, there's a lot you can communicate in that 1 minute. So if you're thinking, all right, the best way for me to communicate with my investors or partners is through WatchPitch, you got to understand that channel and make sure that your message and your audience is right there on WatchPitch. And then you want to also think about this more holistically. So I think it definitely, I think any startup needs to be on WatchPitch. Outside of that, should every startup be on Instagram? I'm not sure. Should every startup be on LinkedIn? Should every startup or any business be putting out press releases to the Wall Street Journal? I mean, the very easy answer there is no. You have to really try to make sure, what do you want to say? Who do you want to say it to? And what's the best channel? Because then you're going to have a much more natural fit for that message that you're trying to convey there.
I can imagine too that how critical it is that that you're very keen on that outcome as well, because so much of once that's been delivered, you want to get some kind of feedback that I'm on course here, and they can now take action. Whether it's in the case of WatchPitch, we've never created WatchPitch to be a closing tool. It's always been designed to be an opening tool, so that now this is a conversation that can continue. So that now we can actually perhaps take the time and all the resources that are involved with a face-to-face meeting and putting people into a room together, and now having that next level conversation. And then of course, the things that maybe you're delivering in a 60-second WatchPitch are genuinely going to be different than the ones that you do in that 3 to 5 to 8 minute pitch that you normally have in a room full of investors. So I can see how that messaging would also change and adjust along the way.
But I think that's a really important point, actually, that I'd like to just take a second to dive into a little bit.
Sure.
So you're thinking about like that call to action, right? So if you have a really good idea of what your message is, right? Like you want to communicate that there's a very real problem, there's a big market opportunity, there's a real problem, and you can solve that. Mm-hmm. And you will understand who is going to care about the fact that I can solve this problem. When you then deliver that call to action, when you've landed that message and you're invoking some sort of emotional response, you're talking to people's fears, aspirations, or their business acumen or their sense. When you land that, I think you're 100% right that you got to deliver that call to action. And if you have a good idea, a really defined idea of what you want to say, who do you want to say it to, and you know the channel that you want to say it, delivering that call to action becomes way easier and way more efficient. And you definitely are going to get a lot more out of that time. So particularly on, think about WatchPitch, you deliver that call to action after those 60 seconds. If you've already delivered the right message to the right audience, that call to action is in the right place, right? Yeah. You're giving that call to action to the people who want to take that action. So I think that point's brilliant. I mean, it's really well said.
Nice. Well, tell me, Zach, we are going to actually talk about some of the calls to action that I'd love everybody who's been watching this live event to take. And before we do that, if people want to find out specifically about what you do and what you bring in terms of value to both individuals and organizations, how do they find out about you? And of course, we'll include this, but I want to be sure we get this communicated now.
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity to even be able to talk about that.
Oh, gosh, absolutely, sure.
My background, as you know, Troy, my background has been more corporate. So I've worked for really big companies all around the world and for great firms and all that, and got to do some really exciting work. And then I started wading into the startup community before I fell in love with it. And the idea of startup comms, startup, which is just, STARTUP, comms, COMMS.com. The idea of startup comms is to take that model and those resources and that high quality communications and marketing and make it available to startups in a way that they can access and that will provide immediate and long-term value for them. So I think really all people have to do is go to startupcomms.com. There's actually a form there. They can fill out their information. We'll write them a free press release to kind of get them started. or they can go to my personal LinkedIn. I post a lot there. I like to engage and talk to people, and that's just LinkedIn/Zach Giglio, Giglio PR, and that's it. They can connect with me there. If you just want to talk or connect, send me a message. I'm usually pretty responsive and excited to talk to people.
Solid, Zach. Thank you so much for taking the time to be part of this. I feel so grateful to have each and every one of you, and especially you in this mix. So thank you again for taking the time there in Charleston. And I think you have some family from out of town that's visiting. So hopefully you have a little.
She's waiting. My sister's waiting very patiently.
Okay, well, thank her for waiting.
And quietly, and we're New Yorkers. We're not quiet, so I'm really proud of her.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone, and have just a great day of what's left with everyone.
Thanks, Trey.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. So I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to be on this live event. And I'm so grateful again to all of the coaches who took their time to share with you some really amazing value and gems to help guide you along the way to crafting and creating a pitch and being present, and also diving into this space of creating warmth with the people that you want to engage as potential partners and potential investors in your business. It does sound like so much of what we're being encouraged to do is to rest into who we truly are, our authentic selves, and start from that place of that inner knowing of who we are and what we're passionate about, and being able to then describe and engage that with other people authentically. And once that warmth is created, that connection is something that we can then build upon. And if we miss that mark, it's going to become very difficult to build further relationships, especially if we're talking about allocating now resources to that partnership. I want to thank you for engaging your time and your resources in participating in this event. This is live at the moment, but I know many of you will also be watching this after it is live. We are fully intending to do more of these live events. If you subscribe to this channel, if you go to watchpitch.com and download the app, or click on the podcast, go to WatchPitch under the search term with wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe to those podcasts, you will also find out more about pitch coaching and delivering content that will find you in a very successful place, engaging other people and engaging other partners in your enterprise, in your business, and in the business that you want to actually create with other people. Lastly, and I'm going to look to my list, I would love you to visit not only our Instagram account and our Facebook account and our LinkedIn account there at WatchPitch, if you do that search term, if you go to Twitter and like us, share us, add comments. I want to be in relationship with you so that I can do a better job in serving your needs in creating the relationships and partnerships that you want to make with investors and other strategic partners that can move your agenda forward. Thank you for being part of this WatchPitch live event. And until the next time, make a difference, show up, and be your best, and you will succeed. Thanks, everyone. It's been a delight.